Ladies and gentlemen,
what you gonna do, brother?
Oh yeah!
Woo! What?
If you smell what the rock.
You got the wrong guy. I'm the dude, man.
Welcome, everybody, to another edition of Around the Turnbuckle. I am the Big Alboski. He is Professor Keith. Our guest is running a little behind. He will be with us very shortly. He is Rudy Gonzalez, a promoter extraordinaire from down in Texas and been in this business a while, Keith. But until Rudy gets here, we'll take care of some business. First and foremost, I want to thank each and every person within the sound of my voice, as does Keith, for joining us last night for Stevie Ray Live. It was great. It was great interaction. It was great talking to him. We wish Stevie Ray the best of luck and everything he's going to moving forward. He's got his podcasts out there, Keith. He's on it. He's live every damn night.
That's what I was going to say. Like, he needs us wishing him luck.
We
need him wishing us luck.
Well, he can, and he will. I'm sure he does. Courtney chiming in. She's in every night. Courtney, from the bottom of our hearts, girl, you are with us each and every week, and we appreciate you to the utmost. Thank you very much, Courtney, for being with us every damn week. Now, before Rudy gets here, Keith and I, we're talking pre-show about what we might talk about. But first, I'm going to pay some bills, and that is tonight at 8 o'clock is our girl Chrissy with Ciphered Knowledge with Chrissy at 8 p.m. On Tuesdays, it's Home Team Sports with myself and the boys talking football and whatnot. The Eagles are winning, by the way. We're going to talk about that and many, many other things. Jalen Hurts, the whole thing. That's Tuesday. We're going to continue our contest, Keith, for a free jersey of their choice if they answer some trivia questions and things like that. We also Wednesday nights, our boy TJ Spitter has Spittin' with Spitter at 8 p.m. on Wednesdays, and we're right back here on Saturdays and Sundays for Around the Turnbuckle. Chris Vant, my boy, checking in. Chris Vant, Redskins are winning as well. Yeah, I kind of figured they might. Courtney says you're welcome. It is our pleasure, sweetheart. I'm so glad that you're here with us. Again, in case you're just joining us, our guest tonight is Rudy Gonzalez, promoter, professional wrestler. He will be with us. As soon as he's with us, we will join him. But in the meantime, we're just going to talk because that's what me and Keith do.
Mm-hmm.
So my son brought this to my attention and brought it to your attention pre-show. He kind of threw this out there as something to talk about. Not that Vince McMahon hasn't lost it already, because by far and away he probably has. We all know this, right? But now he's starting to get involved with the newer talent and saying things like to Keith Lee and Otis, you guys don't lose weight. I'm not going to let you be in the Royal Rumble. All right. Can you speak to Vince McMahon kind of starting to lose his mind?
Well, I mean, Vince has always had a thing about guys' weight. And to some degree, it's not wrong. Because they have had guys on that roster. You know, Yokozuna is obviously going to spring to mind. Vader is going to spring to mind a little bit. Where you have guys where it's not a cosmetic issue, it's a health issue. You know what I mean? It's not good for them. Now, I don't know if Keith Lee and Otis are at that point. Mm-hmm. I know cosmetically, Vince likes a certain body type. He likes a certain weight. There was a lot of stuff going around. Bray Wyatt had to wear a girdle for a long time.
I remember, yes.
Vince didn't like how big he was. Mm-hmm. And then Vince bitched about him wearing a girdle. Like, a man can't wear a girdle. And it's like, but you told him to. And this is one of my contradictions with Vince, is that you have created this system with NXT. And this is why I can't understand why we're having these conversations or arguments now, because these guys are about the same body type they were when they were in NXT. Those cameras feed directly into Connecticut, directly to Titan Tower or wherever WWE headquarters is now. Vince can view that footage whenever he wants. He's not getting guys sending him a tape of, this is what I look like, 4 years ago, and we're just not going to tell him that that's what you can't doctor it now. And there's also talk that Vince has told them that they have told those two and a couple other guys they have to improve the ring work. And again, I go back to, but you have NXT. You have this system where you can evaluate these guys before you put them on the main show. Isn't that the point of NXT? So when you pull these guys out of NXT, you hurt NXT because NXT then has to rebuild their stars, and hopefully they have somebody ready to go when you take these guys out. Sometimes they don't. So you're hurting that brand to bring these guys up to Raw or SmackDown and then turn around and say, oh, this isn't what I want. It's insane. I mean, Vince used to talk about the old promoters that got stuck in their ways. He used to say Vern Gagne had the world on a plate and he got stuck in his ways and he couldn't see Hulk Hogan. He couldn't see Hulk Hogan and what Hulk Hogan was going to become.
Right.
And all that. Vince is now that old promoter. And it's sad. It really is sad because I know we all get off on making fun of Vince, making fun of how crazy he is and how he's lost it and all that. But, I mean, this guy has had more success than any of us will ever have. This guy has had more success than just about anybody could dream of. He is the Walt Disney of wrestling. He is. But, Uncle Walt had this problem, too, where he got to the end of his life and he was looking for new mountains to conquer. And a lot of times he would have a lot more misfires than he would successes. And it's sad. It's sad to see Vince seemingly losing touch and not being able to change his attitude and change his perceptions.
So Joe chimes in with, I thought it was about sending them back to NXT because of their talent level.
I haven't heard they're going back to NXT. I've heard they're working out at the Performance Center to try to address this stuff. But I haven't seen any report that says that they're going back to NXT. My feeling is they're going to stay where they are. They're going to maybe be used on TV a little less until they address this problem. But what I can't understand is you have a developmental brand, and yes, NXT is on USA and third brand, but it's still primarily the developmental brand. It's primarily the brand that gets guys ready to be sent to Raw and SmackDown, the bigger shows that do the bigger numbers. And I just can't understand why, if that's the purpose and you're still saying you're not ready, why did you bring them up then? What was the point in that? I don't understand. It makes no sense to me.
So breaking news, I got Rudy Gonzalez on my phone here and he's having difficulty coming in here. I'm gonna resend him the link, and we're gonna see how that goes. See if this works or not, because he is not in my backstage area, and he showed me a picture of where he is. So let me just go on here. You can, if you want to, keep talking, Keith. Oh, is Finn Balor back in NXT?
Yes, he is the NXT champion.
Right. And I mean, the thing with Finn Balor is, and you might agree with this, Keith, is that I'm always afraid of when the next time the guy's going to get hurt, right? Because he's just like, he's like, I think the most talented guy on the roster, and he, has that reputation of, like, once he's at the top of the mountain, somehow he hurts himself and then he goes away.
I don't think that's necessarily fair, because, I mean, what happened with the Universal title was the buckle bomb issue. Look, he was almost here.
No, that was me.
Oh. You're trying to be in here twice? You're really trying?
Yeah, I was trying to be here twice because I'm that much of an egomaniac. Why did they send him back? There's Rudy right there. Okay, we got him. Thank you, Joe. Thank you for all that. We are going to be joining our guest in a second.
Yeah, I just want to answer Joe's question, though. As
Go
far
ahead.
as I know, it was a case of they wanted somebody that was a name for NXT that audience would accept when
Yes.
they went to USA, and he was kind of just floating around on Raw and SmackDown where they really didn't have anything for him to do. So they felt like to give NXT a shot in the arm, the way to go was let him go back to NXT. That would be the best use of him, and I think they were absolutely 100% right.
Joining us is Rudy Boy Gonzalez. What's up, man?
How you guys doing? Finally figured this out.
It's a little challenging the first time. I think I had some issues too.
I'm just very, believe it or not, I'm very computer illiterate. So I mean, it took me a while to figure it out.
Well, we can hear you. You sound great. How are you tonight?
I'm good. I'm doing real good.
I hate to ask this next question. Are you in Texas right now?
Yes.
How's the weather down there? Because it's like 20 degrees and about to snow here.
Right now, I think it's like I hate to say this, but it's sunny and 64 degrees.
Gas up the car. We're going to Texas.
We're wearing shorts and t-shirt and what can I say? I love it.
Yeah, man, it's an honor to have you on here. You've been in this business a while, yes?
Yes, sir. Since I walked in the office of Southwest Championship Wrestling for the first time in 1982.
Man.
January 2nd, 1982.
Wow.
And correct me if I'm wrong, Southwest was the Blanchards, right?
Southwest Championship Wrestling was ran by Joe Blanchard in San Antonio.
Exactly, Tully's father. Okay.
Right.
I thought I had my history correct. I like to try to pride myself on that.
Or as guys say nowadays, Tessa Blanchard's grandfather.
Yeah.
Right.
You know.
That's
or,
right.
You know, Tully's Tessa Blanchard's dad. It's like they don't know about the Four Horsemen and all that stuff. They're like, if I mention Tully, they're like, who is that? And I'm like, Tessa's dad. Oh, yeah, I know who that is. Yeah.
Does that ever irk you at all? Because that irks me a little bit, how much people don't seem to pay attention to history. I mean, I'm not saying you have to have an encyclopedic knowledge or anything, but, like, you know, Tully wasn't some guy that was on, like, dusty tapes that you have to find in a rack somewhere. Like, this is a guy that was in WCW. He was in the WWF. Like, it just kind of irks me, somebody that was national like that. People are going, oh, yeah, I know him as the father of whoever's popular now, you know?
That's just how guys are nowadays. That's just how the kids are. They don't know, you know. It's weird because then I have some friends that are NFL players, and they can tell you about Earl Campbell, and they can tell you about, you know, all the past, former, great, and not so known NFL players. But you get some of these wrestling guys, and you ask them about Luthez or Gene Kiniski or Tully Blanchard, you know, and they're like, you know, I don't know who that is. So, like at the TWA, like at the Texas Wrestling Academy, my place, I'll make guys write an essay, like a report. Find somebody, you know, prior to 2000, and write something about them, a full page report, you know, and you know, for a while there, I was getting like the John Cena's and stuff like that, and that's why I put a time frame in there because I don't want to. I know about John Cena, I know about The Rock, I know about Drew McIntyre, I know, you know, I want to know about Bruno Sammartino, and I want to know about Pedro Morales, and you know. Eddie Gilbert, you know, those guys.
Hot stuff. So yeah, I mean, I've been number one. Nice to meet you. I'm Alan. This is Keith. Keith's been a wrestling fan since like the early '90s. I'm wrong. I'm not right and wrong in saying that, right, Keith?
No, you're right about '92.
But I've been a wrestling fan since.
Old soul.
But I've been a wrestling fan since the early '80s. When I was 5 years old, my stepfather took me to a match up in Allentown, Pennsylvania, and it was Hulk Hogan and Andre the Giant were a tag team against Big John Studd and King Kong Bundy. And I just couldn't. I was like pretty close. I wasn't in the front row, but I was close to ringside, and I was I could not believe, and as a 5-year-old kid, how big these guys were. Can you imagine Andre the Giant walking by you when you're 5 years old? I was instantly like hooked. Like, you know what I mean? So, you know, we built this podcast to get the local town around us talking, telling them their stories. And we love what we love this business. I'm sure as much as you do, you know, but the thing is, having somebody like yourself who's been around a while is we're just excited to pick your brain if you don't mind tonight.
No, not a problem. And the funny thing is, like, I completely 100% appreciate, you know, where you guys are coming from. Surprisingly, and I started this in 1982, so that's like 1,000 years, you know, ago. You know,
for some people,
yeah. But I wasn't a wrestling fan when I grew up. So, like 5 years old, I was playing with G.I. Joe. You know, I was not a wrestling fan. My dad, you know, and I've said the story 100 times, but my dad took me to 2 wrestling shows when I was a kid, when I was about 10 or so, and I just wasn't into it. I saw like looking back, I saw like a young Wahoo Mcdaniel, Thunderbolt Patterson.
Wow.
Tully Blanchard was actually a referee. He was still in high school. I mean, I just Rick Martel, I think at the time, was just breaking in. I mean, I wasn't into wrestling, so my dad took me once or twice and saw that I wasn't into it and never took me again until I turned 18. And then my high school football coach was he coached a semi-pro football team here in San Antonio called the San Antonio Toros.
Yeah.
And he happened to coach a guy named Joe Benarski, who was Ivan Putski. He coached a guy named Frank Goodish, who I think played the defensive line, and that later on became Bruiser Brody.
Bruiser Brody.
Yep. He knew a lot of guys, and so he suggested me to go train. And it's funny because, you know, I had nowhere to train at when I got out of high school, and so I did. You know, I went to college one semester for the fall, and then I came back home for Christmas break, and he suggested, well, my friends opened up a wrestling school. I'm not telling you to be a pro wrestler. I'm saying he knows a lot of the wrestlers used to be football players and what have you. So, you know, it'd be a good place for you to go. So, and he said, you know, he mentioned Joe Blanchard. Well, Tully at the time was, when I turned 18, I was going to be a high school football coach. And Tully, when he was in high school, he played high school football here in San Antonio, and he was a big quarterback star. It was Tully Blanchard and Tommy Kramer, who Tommy played for the Vikings.
Okay.
And so I was like, oh, shoot, Tully Blanchard. All right. So when I went and they gave me the address and I saw that it was Southwest Wrestling and when I walked in the door, I wasn't going to be a pro wrestler. It just, you know, I was just going to go there to train. That was it. And so, you know, I went and talked to Mr. Blanchard and so Wahoo Mcdaniel was there, and I looked him up later on, and he played for the New York Jets and all that stuff, you know. So and then Manny Fernandez was there. He played at West. A lot of the guys went to West Texas State University here in Texas, and so I felt comfortable there. So before I went back to school, before I was supposed to go back to school, Joe sent me to go work with the ring guy who was also the referee. His name was Juan Reynoso. Very cool dude, man. And so I went with Juan to go help with the ring up in Corpus Christi, Texas. And I don't know. The main event was Wahoo Mcdaniel versus Tully Blanchard, and Tully and Wahoo beat the heck out of each other. And up to that point, I just wasn't interested. Now all of a sudden I'm interested. And the fans are screaming and hollering, and and it caught my, it caught my attention. And so then, I did, that was like a Thursday night. And then Friday night, he asked if and he did this to give me some money so I could have some spending money in school. So the next night was Austin, Texas or something like that. It might've been a small town or something. And same thing. The sheep herders were down here. And I mean, you're seeing these fans who are going nuts over this stuff they call fake,
right?
And I mean, at that time, Texas was hot. I mean, you'd go to these small towns, it'd be 5, 6, 7, 800 people. You'd go to the big cities, and there were like 2,500.
Yeah, they love wrestling in Texas. Sure.
Oh yeah,
sure
it was crazy. And then they come to the dressing room, and the guys are bleeding, and I'm like, if this is fake, then how come this guy's bleeding? How come this guy is, because I didn't know any of that stuff.
Right.
And so, and then one of the matches I saw also at that time was Tully Blanchard and Terry Funk had a match.
Oh.
And somehow or another, Tully got a hammer, and he tore up Terry Funk's ear.
Oh.
And and I ate that up. The fans ate that up. Terry was screaming and hollering, and I'm like, if this is BS, why is this guy screaming like this?
Yeah,
it was blood. I mean, Terry was like a blood curdling scream, like And then after everything was over with, Terry's on the side, laying on the ground, holding his ear, and he's screaming, "My ear! I can't hear anything. Please help me!" And people are going crazy, and I'm like, holy cow. And then the next day when I saw him, he was fine. So, I take that back. He had his ear wrapped up and whatever.
Wrapped up, sure.
And I was like, all right, so there's something going on here. Meanwhile, 18 years old, you're trying to figure out your way in life and whatever. Mm-hmm. And you're trying to figure out your way. You're trying to figure out the easiest way in life. So, at the same time, Joe Blanchard's sitting, he comes in the next day with a briefcase, full of money. And I'm like, this guy is bringing in the big bucks, And so I actually talked to him later, before I went back to school, and I said I wanted to learn the wrestling business. I never said I wanted to be a pro wrestler. I said I wanted to learn the wrestling business.
Sure.
And again, I was completely ignorant to pro wrestling. I didn't realize Joe Blanchard was a former wrestler. Even though he walked around, he had this limp from wrestling and playing football and stuff. I never, I just didn't know. So I saw the wrestling guys getting beat up and whatever, but I saw this older man, not getting beat up but walking around with a briefcase full of money.
Right.
And so I'm like, all right, I need to figure this out.
I want to be that guy.
Yeah. Exactly. And so in the course of learning the wrestling business,
right.
Guys like Manny Fernandez and Eric Embry and Gino Hernandez and Ken Lucas and Ricky Morton and all those guys would ask me, "Hey, do you want to go work out in the ring tomorrow? Do you want to meet up at the junction where we did our TV shows? You want to go take a few bumps? You want to learn how to do this? You want to take a bite? You want to?" And sure, yeah, let's go.
Yeah.
And so at the same time, I was learning how to work. They weren't really. No one ever said, okay, so you got to do this, and then you got to pretend you got to do this, and then you got to act like, they just did stuff. And I naturally, like one day, I think it was Tully, he said, "You want to know how to do a body slam?" And I said, "Sure." So we go to the ring, and Tully body slams me. I never body slammed him once. Tully body slammed me like 25 times. And my back is feels like every disc was exploding,
Yeah.
And So he goes. So after he does like 25 in a row, he's like, "All right, okay, get up. Let's try it again." And all right, get up, try it again. Okay, put your arms this way. Do this. But he's really teaching me how to take a bump.
Right.
And but I didn't know that. And so afterwards, when we're done, he's like, "All right, you got it. You got it figured out yet?" I'm like, "Yeah." All right, let's go. So we left. So I never body slammed Tully. I never learned how to do a body slam from Tully. I learned how to take one.
You gotta take one.
but that was the process of me learning, and that's how the guys were. You know, Chavo did the same thing with me. Manny did the same thing with me. They weren't, and the thing is, like with my, like, you know, when I do my guys at the school, none of the guys ever abused me. You may say, well, 25 body slams. Well, how else are you gonna learn how to bump if the guy's not, you know,
right?
You know, that's just part of the deal. So, and looking back, nobody ever slammed me and hooked me and tried to drop me on my head or anything. They always they took care of me. Right. And so when I train my guys now, yeah, I make them take a lot of bumps, but it's never, you know, to try and like, ha ha ha, you got hurt, you know, stuff like that. I mean, the only way you can learn how to take a bump is by taking a bump.
So we got our first question for you from a professional wrestler named JT Funk. You may have heard of him. What were some ways to get booked by promoters prior to the social media era?
Easy, or not so easy. Just the same way you do now. You would show up to the building, you know, and say, "Hey, I'm Rudy Gonzalez. I was trained by so and so, and if you got a spot open on your card, you know, I got my stuff with me." And sometimes they would say, "All right, well, we'll see. Well, you know, let me see what we can do." Sometimes, you know, you would get grilled, like, you know, well, who trained you? And if you came up with, "Oh, well, I got trained by unknown wrestling guy," you got nowhere.
Right.
But if you dropped a name like, "Well, I got trained by by Joe Blanchard. I started with Joe Blanchard."
Right.
Okay, well, how's Joe doing? You know, I was doing great. And maybe they might make a phone call to see if you're lying or whatever. But
right.
You know, but that's how you did it. You know, and now guys, you know, they send emails and, you know, private messages and all that stuff. But back then, I mean, if you wanted to get booked, you had to show up, or if you had video or tape, you would send it out in the mail.
In the mail.
Not email. In the mail.
We didn't email anybody. You didn't send people a video package on Facebook or whatever. You actually put a tape in the mail. Here's my stuff, man.
In a manila envelope.
Yeah.
And you know, put on their important or something to catch the attention. You know, if you were smart, you'd make it like a bright colored envelope and send it so that, you know, whoever, you know, would see it would like, "Oh, where does blue envelope come from? Who's sending this to me?" You know. But that was it. And so you sent your stuff off, and you'd have to wait weeks, you know, for someone to call you back. We didn't have cell phones, so you had to have a reliable phone number where you're at, and where you can be reached at, you know.
Yeah, JT, that was a great question, JT Funk. Keith, you got a question for the man?
Well, I mean, I just wanted to expand on something Rudy was saying, because we were talking about the top, you know, people aren't always as up on their wrestling history as they should be. You know, back then it was still kind of more of a closed society, right? Like, that's why you were trained the way you were trained, because they needed to know that A, you could take it, and B, if you couldn't take it and you walked away, they didn't want you smartened up to what was going on, because if you're smartened up and you're not going to stay, you can start going around town and you can tell them, "Hey, this is how they do it. It's all fake," and you destroy their business.
Trust.
So,
they wanted to know they can trust you. And so, like, someone talked about this just the other day on Facebook, and it was like, it's BS that only certain people get in and whatever. But no, that's not. That's why the wrestling was the way it was. That's why people always knew wrestling was whatever it is. They just didn't know for sure. I know these guys have a beer after the matches, but they had a fight and they just didn't know. Right. So that's why that's why guys would come up with, if someone said wrestling's fake, oh yeah, you want to get in the ring and find out,
Right?
Because somewhere in there, that guy that just told the guy, do you want to get in the ring and find out? Somewhere in the past, he was stretched, he was challenged, he was whatever, and whoever deemed him trustworthy, there was never any oath like, you raise your right hand, I promise to, nothing like that. It was just like, all right, you're good to go. And if you got the stamp of approval of someone like Blanchard or Von Erich or Graham or somebody, you did your best to uphold that trust. And so, and back then everything, that was everything, trust was everything. So when guys today say, well, yeah, man, that's BS because his brothers, he only books his brother and his cousin and that's how it was back then also, you know? And so it's not BS, The reason why I got into pro wrestling, my dad didn't wrestle. My uncles, my cousins, I don't have no family wrestling. But my football coach knew Joe Blanchard. They were good friends. And so that was my connection. Otherwise, so what happened was I walked in the office and the lady in the office was like, can I help you? And I'm like, I came here to see Joe Blanchard. And she's like, well, he's not here right now. And I was like, all right, well, when he'll be back? And she said, I have no idea. Who are you? I said, my name is Rudy Gonzalez. And she said, well, what do you want to see him for? And I said, well, my football coach sent me to talk to him about training. And then in the other office, on the other side of the doorway, I hear someone say, I heard a gentleman say, who's your coach? And that was Mr. Blanchard.
Sure.
And, so I was like, George Pasterchek. And he said, how's old George doing? And so I'm like, he's doing fine. He goes, come on back here. So he was there. She was just the gatekeeper, I guess you could say.
Right.
And so I went back to his office and we talked for a while. And then he said, well, what can I do for you? And I said, well, this is what I came here for. And so that was it.
So who pointed us in your direction? I hope you know that.
Who?
Tony Batista.
Really? Tony's one of my students, and one of the guys that I trained is in the Air Force, and trained with me for a year, 2 years maybe, and he is the everything I tried to be when I broke in. The trustworthy guy. If I had questions, I went to Mr. Blanchard. I worked my if he said put the ring up, I would say how fast you want it. I always tried to be that guy, that kid and that's who Tony is. Even though he's older than I am when I started. He had a fast he's in the Air Force. He didn't have to, but he pulled himself back and just a perfect hardworking young man. I'm proud to say he's my student. I love him to death. He's a good dude.
Well,
we have the privilege on our show, and we watched him live. He's great.
Yeah,
you did a great job with him. He is just a fantastic person, and he is a great wrestler.
And it's weird because there are some guys.
We're not select.
There are some guys just like back in the day that, well, now I'm a wrestler and I don't need I don't need anything else. I don't need anybody's help, and they leave, and it's disappointing because I'm like, man, I'm here for you. And all my guys should know that I'm here. Once you sign the dotted line, I'm your guy, and I'll do whatever I can to help you. And some guys, they come in, they train for a little while, and then they're like, well, I don't need your help no more, and they leave.
So speaking of Tony Batista, he's like, I love him too. That's my old man.
The one thing I hate about Tony Batista is I'm not an old man. My son calls me that. Hey, old man, and I'm like, Steve, I'm not an old man. Stop calling me that. and then Tony will send me a message or whatever, and he'll say same thing. I love you, old man, and I'm like,
yeah.
I love you too, Tony.
So listen, when Keith and I were at the live show that he performed at, right, and we saw him up against Rob Atkins, right? So all night long, I was watching all the wrestlers, and I was thinking, oh, I'd like to have him on the show. Or I'd like to have him on the show. When we watched Tony wrestle, I was like, I've got to go meet him, and I got to get him on the show because I think he's going places.
Right.
Mhm.
And so I went backstage because we knew some of the guys. We knew they were there. We knew the promoter. So I felt like we were back there. I walked around back, and Tony was back there right after his match. He was just kind of packing his gear up and stuff like that. And I was like, I introduced myself, told him who I was, and Tony was like, "Hell yeah, I'll be on." Like I told him who I was. Like, he goes, "Hell yeah, I'll be on your show." So we had him on, and he was awesome. And you're right, his work ethic, his personality, like everything about him screams that he can do anything he wants.
Yeah, he's one of those guys 100% legit, and I don't mean that in his wrestling stuff. I mean that as a human being. He's a good
Person, yeah.
good dude. Yeah.
JT Funk has another question. What do you think is missing in the current generation of wrestlers, and why?
I think respect is the main thing. Just that, you know, and I always refer back to when I broke in, I didn't know what wrestling was. I thought it was real. So I handled all the guys, you know, and the guys were legit also. Like Mongolian Stomper, Archie Goldie, nice guy, man. He was a sweetheart of a man, but as the Mongolian Stomper, I was scared shitless of that guy.
It's the old, I can't make them believe it's real, but I can make them believe I'm real.
Exactly. I mean, there was a guy named Ali Bey the Turk who was, and this may be bullshit. I don't know. I mean, can you say that on TV? This may be
Absolutely.
You can say that here, yeah.
But I'm 5'8". Ali Bey was like 5'6", and but he was like a Turkish Olympic wrestler and stuff like that. And I tried boxing when I was younger, and I ended up boxing with a guy, breaking in with a guy named Tony Ayala Jr., who was a big boxing guy. He had some issues, but he was like a legitimate. He was Mike Tyson before Mike Tyson, and Tony, you know, we became friends. But Tony beat my ass at the gym, and I trained. I messed around with the boxing idea for like 3 weeks, and Tony Ayala Jr. was the reason why I said, "Screw this! I'm going to do something else." So like Ali Bey was like this Turkish Olympic Greco-Roman wrestling guy and stuff, and we got in the ring a couple of times, and he's spent like 30 minutes suplexing me. And so yeah, and you know, after the first one, I earned his respect, and I didn't dare try and, you know, be a smart ass with him or anything. And so even though he was shorter than I was, 100%, you know, yes sir, yes sir. The Bushwhackers, you guys are they weren't.
I love the Bushwhackers.
The Sheep Herders, Luke Wood and Butch Miller and Jonathan Boyd, nice guys, but you knew not to piss them off. You know, the guys that you saw in WWF, you know, walking around with their arms, you know, that type of stuff. Screw that.
That wasn't them.
Yeah, that's not them. Wahoo, and I saw Wahoo chop a guy and bust his head open.
Really?
On the
Wahoo's chops were no joke.
So, I mean, the guys back then, you had to respect them. Otherwise, you know, you're liable to get, you know, punched in the mouth or whatever.
Right.
Nowadays, guys mouth off and whatever. And as older guys, I was always taught, you know, to try and help younger guys. And there was, you know, the older guys that tried to help me, a lot of them didn't have a filter. If I had a match and I came to the back, somebody would say, hey, you effing kid, what the F was that? What kind of match was that? You know, and you're just like, okay, what did I do wrong? You know, now if you tell a kid, you know, hey, what the F was that? What are you effing doing out in the ring? What the? They're like, oh, you gotta respect me, man. You can't talk to me that way, and you know, and you know, and I've seen it, you know, and I just think a lot of the guys just don't have the same respect for the older guys or just for the business as we did back then. The stuff that I was taught years ago, I see guys mocking now, you know, and it's like, why would you do that? That's how you make. But at the same time, the guys today don't make the money that they did,
right?
You know, and so it's like you're mocking the exact thing that you're trying to make a living off of. So if you're not taking what you're doing seriously, why should the fans?
Exactly.
You know, we've met a lot of guys in doing this show, and a lot of local talent, and I think it depends on the mentors, right? Who teaches them, who trains them, because like you meet a guy, talk about a guy like JT Funk, for instance, who's been chiming in all night. JT Funk is a friend of the show. He has sent us many fellow wrestlers to interview. JT Funk is like been in the business for only like 3 years, and he's the most humble dude I've ever met. I mean, he knows he's good. He knows he's getting there, but he knows he also needs a lot of work too.
Right.
And for somebody his age and getting into the business the way he is, he can go places too because he's got the right attitude. And I think it's all about whoever's been training some of these guys. Because if you on the flip side, if you see some guy like you've talked about that had you know, not so great a teacher, you know what I'm saying? It's that old adage, like it's the old Karate Kid thing. It's the way the Cobra Kai was taught versus the way Mr. Miyagi teaches people.
Right. And I think like around the 90s or so, I want to say, is when the territories were dying down, and then the independence promotion started popping up.
Yeah.
And so there was that transition of, if you couldn't, like the way I ended up getting into Southwest Wrestling and actually working was I you know, for a long while I was actually getting in the ring and training with some of the guys, and then a spot opened up. They stuck me in there. I had no clue what to do, but I just went by what, you know, the thing that they always told me was listen. And so when it came time for me to get in the ring, it was a tag match with of all people, the Sheep Herders. And so when I you know, I'm watching the match and I see them beating up my partner, and the crowd, you know, we're at the junction where we did our TV show, and the crowd's, you know, screaming and hollering, and so I'm really trying to listen to, because I can hear them talking in the ring. And I hear take an elbow, take a knee, watch the punch, watch the forearm, slam, you know, that type of stuff. And then I hear, and I'm like, I'm watching as they're doing this stuff, and nobody called anything in the back, by the way. It was all called in the ring.
Right? Yeah.
So I'm watching, and then I hear tag Rudy, and I'm like, oh, shoot. It's my turn now. And so, even though at this point now, I kind of had a clue how things worked out. So even though I saw them, you know, beating up my partner, there was still a part of me that was like, man, they are effing him up. And so when I heard tag Rudy, I'm like, well, here I go. So I jump in the ring and I hear punch, 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 kick me. And so I'm punching and kicking the guys, and then I hear nothing, and then Butch Miller kicks me in the back, and then slams me, and then they, you know, tag your partner. So, you know, tag Manny or whatever. And so I tagged my partner back in. So, you know, you're taught all this stuff, whatever, and you try and pass on to the next guy. I think. So when the independence came about, if you couldn't do that stuff, if you couldn't catch on to how things were done, you just weren't used. What was that? until you learned how to work. And so some guys were like, so for a while there, that was the way it was until somebody said, you know what, F you guys, I'll start my own promotion.
Yep.
And there you go. So back to trying to get booked and stuff.
Yeah.
If a guy called me and said, hey, back then, if a guy called me and said, hey, I want you to do a show for me, if I didn't know who that guy was, I wouldn't work for him. I worked for Joe Blanchard and Fritz von Erich, and I did some shows for Paul Bosch. I did some shows for Bill Watts. We've all heard of those guys.
Oh, yes.
I never heard of Mike White. Who? Yeah, man, I just bought a ring and I'm going to do a show at the, and I wouldn't mess with those guys. So what those guys would do was they trained their own guys. So now you got guys that couldn't make it in the promotions back then. Now you got them training guys, and so you're watering down the product. And so now, before you knew it, and so somebody else said, "Oh, well, Mike White did this, so I think I'll do it too." And so now you have this big deluge of indie promotions.
Right.
And then at the same time, the Blanchards and the Von Erichs and the Paul Bosches and Bill Watts, those guys were being absorbed by Vince, which left the independents open to the Cowboys that were trying to be the next Vince McMahon or whatever, and which turned into for me to learn to work properly, I was told to sit at the house shows and watch the matches. And if you know anything about working wrestling, house shows and TV shows are night and day.
Right.
Yeah.
So I learned to work I learned to wrestle and work the crowd and all that stuff. And so these guys are coming up. They don't have house shows that they were booked on to watch. So they would watch All American Wrestling, or they would watch Wrestling Main Event, TV shows. So they copied their style of working from the TV shows. So, the part of working the crowd, of emotion, all that stuff got thrown out the window. And so now even today, you see guys, you'll see me post something like, "Hey, don't do this, don't do that," and then you'll see some knucklehead say, "Well, John Cena does it." Well,
you're not John Cena.
Yeah, you're not exactly. And I saw them do it on TV. So how come if you can't? It's like, dude, shut up.
Yeah, right.
And it's a whole different mentality now, a whole different way guys look at stuff, and guys, talk themselves, I guess.
So Funk had this. I want to put this back up because Funk said positive attitude always beats talent. Always been my motto in wrestling. And Big Joe is chiming in with a question: who in WWE do you enjoy watching nowadays, or respect their talent?
Some of the obvious are Keith Lee, because I know his history.
I love that.
Yeah, I mean, and then they just did that documentary, and so I thought I knew his history, but there's more to the man than showing up for a show. And I booked him on a few shows, and the first thing he always asked me is do you have some tickets that I can sell for you? And hardly anybody ever asked that.
Nice.
Yeah, and I'm like, yeah, I do. And he'd be like, can I meet you somewhere? And little did I know that he was living in his car at times,
Wow.
Stuff like that. Yeah, and the struggles that he was dealing with, I didn't know that part of him. I knew the kid that would show up and do the shows and work his tail off. His style that I really don't agree with. He did all the dives and all that stuff
for a guy his size.
Yeah, and I think somewhere in that documentary where it says like some guys told him he shouldn't do this and this. Well, I was one of those guys, and it's just because I like the guy so much. I don't want him doing something where he ends up getting hurt, and then his whole career is washed, down the drain. So I was one of the guys who were like, man, you need to work on doing this better and doing that instead of flipping or whatever, But that's what made him unique. The bad thing about that, though, is that every big guy now says, well, I'm going to do this because Keith Lee does it. Well, Keith Lee did it, and it made him different, but you're doing it, and you look like every other copycat guy.
You know a guy named Urban Legend?
Yes, I do.
Well, he just chiming in, Rudy with the muscles right there. Urban Legend's a friend of the show as well.
Comes from the East Coast. I was introduced to him by someone else, and always asked me questions. Always, another kid and he's been honest with me. Dealt with struggles, trying to figure stuff out, trying to make a name for himself, and there's really no easy answer for that stuff. It's just. You just like JT said, you got to keep that positive attitude.
Yeah, he's good though. I mean, Urban Legends have been on the show several times. He's very good. He's great at self promotion. He's in league with the right. He's in league with the right people. He's doing his thing in Virginia, but I can see him if he gets the shot. I can see him doing things too.
And that's all it is, man. Is the guys getting a shot and getting that opportunity and taking it 1,000% as far as you can take it, and not when you get that opportunity, I'll do this next time. There may not be a next time.
True. Facts.
So you gotta, when you get those opportunities, that goes for anybody. You get an opportunity, man, take it as far as you can. Put everything out into it. When you leave the building, you may be exhausted, you may be drained, you may be empty, but you left it all there, and there should be no reason why William Regal or Matt Bloom or any of those trainers at the Performance Center are like, yeah, but there shouldn't be that. But there should be, we got to get this guy signed.
Right.
As far as the other guys, like someone mentioned about that I watch in WWE, Raquel Gonzalez, I trained her. Yeah, and I mean, she's worked hard. I've seen her. You kind of like. She was on NXT, then they pulled her off NXT for a while. They put her back on. She came in as a bodyguard, and so you see that they're doing stuff with her. But now she's kind of like she just did that War Games, and it looks like they're setting her up with a program with Rhea Ripley, and I mean, she's starting to hit her stride. She's doing really well. I like Damian Priest. Another good
Frank Guilford says seize the moment.
See Frank Guilford. Hey, seize the moment. I mean, you never know when you're gonna. You never know when that if you're ever gonna get that opportunity again. That's why take it and take it as far as you can. I like a lot of the guys and the 205 Live just because they're smaller guys, and I can relate to. You got to do some stuff to get noticed.
Mm-hmm.
I like watching 205 Live because those are some hardworking kids.
Sure.
They're not as big as Keith Lee or Damian Priest or some of the other guys, but I mean, they put into work, and I completely 100% appreciate guys that put the work in and really, you can tell who they are when they really, really, really try. And they're trying so hard to accomplish whatever it is they're trying to accomplish. You can tell when guys phone it in. You can tell when guys are like half-assing stuff. You can tell.
Go ahead, Keith.
I'm sorry. And I mean, you made your contribution to 205 Live as well. I mean, you had a hand in training Brian Kendrick. He's one of your former students, if I'm not mistaken.
Another one of those, yes, sir, coach, I love you. I mean, I'll get a message every now and then. From Brian, just out of the blue, I love you, coach. And I mean, all those guys that are out there training guys right now, or whether it's wrestling, whether it's baseball, football, you get those messages, and it just kind of like kicks you in the gut, but in a good way. Brian and Tony and a lot of these guys, they have that knack of. It seems like when things just aren't exactly like you want them to be, then you get that message and you're like, makes it worthwhile, Yeah, I love Brian Kendrick. I consider Brian Kendrick one of my best friends in the business. I had his first match with him. I trained him at Sean's. He went through some issues, and I brought him down to San Antonio, and we talked, we cried, we laughed, and then I got him. I helped. I talked him into contacting the Performance Center to get re-signed with WWE, and he did. He came down here one day and talked me into contacting the Performance Center about going in as a trainer, as a coach. So I mean, we're in constant contact, trying to help each other out. Huge amount of respect for him, as well as the other Brian kid, whatever his name is.
Yeah, that other one. Whatever happened to him?
I don't know, man.
I think he main evented a WrestleMania once.
He only main evented WrestleMania.
Yeah, I mean, good boys, man. All the guys. I've been fortunate in guys like Brian and Lance Cade and Tony Batista and some of the guys that are down here, Moonshine Mantell and Max Castellano and I mean, for me to say that I love them is like a way understatement. Good boys, hard workers. I wish the very best for them.
It seems like the love comes back to you, though, man. You say they all keep in contact with you. All the guys we've had on tonight said, we love Coach.
I try and teach. I try and I am who I am. I'm not going to deny anything. I'm not going to, sometimes I can be sometimes I can be a dick,
But you gotta be.
But exactly. Sometimes you have to be. Sometimes, like I'll hear guys say, well, you got to treat them with respect. You got to treat them with respect, but you also have to be firm with some of these guys. You also have to, hey, I just said I love Brian Kendrick, but every day is not always roses and kisses. I mean, there's been times where there's like F you and F that, and I hate this shit, and all right, well then go home then, stuff like that. But that's to me, that's just part of the love. That's part of the growing process. That's part of the teaching process. There's frustration involved. There's I want to see so much. I want to see so much good for these guys, and sometimes they don't see it. And so the frustration on my end comes out, which leads to the frustration on their end coming out. And that's just how it is. When I worked with Shawn Michaels, we bumped heads many times. A lot of guys are like, that's your boy. Shawn wasn't my boy and I wasn't his boy. Yeah. We both had the same goals in mind. We wanted the best for the students. We wanted the guys, if they wanted to be stars, we're going to make you a star. And some of the guys resisted and for whatever reason, and we're like, all right, eventually you'll come back. Some guys came back, some guys didn't. That's fine. But and Shawn, if you guys ever talk to him, Shawn loved every one of those guys that came into the school also. They're like your kids, and you hurt when they hurt, you're happy when they're happy. Some of the guys, like I talked about me and Brian and talking and crying and all that stuff. I've experienced that with a few of the guys, and that, when they open up to you that way, you're in, you're both cool. Yeah. Well, that, I don't know other way to put that, but it's genuine,
Listen,
that's beautiful,
Rudy. I feel like we just scratched the surface with you, and it's like we're at the top of the hour already, man. That was such amazing stuff. I mean, it went by so quick. I hope I can have you on. I hope we can have you on again because we didn't even talk about the PC Center, Shawn Michaels, any of that kind of stuff. We just talked about the business in general. How do you feel?
With the interview right now?
No, yeah, coming back.
Oh, I'm wide open, man. I feel like the PC and all that stuff was a great experience for me. But talking about these guys like Tony and Brian and JT, I think that's, I feel like that's like the real story, because those are the guys. That place is going to be, the PC's always going to be there, I think. And if I get called, that's great. If I don't, that's great also. But the relationship I have with these guys, Frank Guilford just messaged me. You know what? Frank's runs a gym, and he's always like we run our events there, and he's always trying to like mess with my stuff and whatever. Rudy, you ought to try this. One day I'm gonna stop the heck out of him, and I'm gonna get him in the ring, and he's gonna wish he just kept his mouth shut.
But listen, like we're trying to build like an audience so that these guys can come on and tell their stories, and you just. We didn't even scratch the surface with you. My God, like Keith, we could talk to him for another hour. I know
easily. And I mean, I love having somebody like you on here that, you're training, you're giving back, and
these guys are all chiming in. They want to pick your brain.
Exactly. And that's what's so gratifying to me when we can have someone like you on that's been in the business so long, what you're doing, you're willing to give back, and we can give them the resource of getting in touch with you.
We're excited.
Being able to facilitate them learning something. That's great.
We're excited. Yeah, man, we're excited just to have a part of it, because like the current product was kind of letting us down there. And back in the summertime when the pandemic was really off and running, we started this podcast as just a bunch of guys sitting around talking wrestling. And the next thing you know, we met local stars, and it started to snowball. And I mean, last night on Around the Turnbuckle, we had WCW former tag team champion Stevie Ray on, and it just blew our minds. We're like, oh my God, we just talked to Stevie Ray. And now tonight, after later on, we're gonna talk, and we're gonna be like, oh my God, we just talked to Rudy Boy Gonzalez, because like when I mentioned to Keith who we're having, he said Rudy Boy Gonzalez, like the guy who trained like with Daniel Bryan and Brian Kendrick and the PC and Shawn Michaels. And I'm like, yeah, I think so. And he goes, wow, okay. Like I hit him with that last minute kind of thing. But man, we didn't even scratch the surface with you, man. It was a delight just to let you go, man. I just like, hey everybody, this is Rudy Boy Gonzalez, and you just went, man. This is great.
I greatly appreciate it, man. I really do. I really do.
It was an honor for us.
Yeah, we don't want to keep you, but I'm gonna keep in contact with you, and I'm gonna get you on and for a part 2, because we need it. I don't even think we scratched the surface, right?
Sure.
But yeah, I want to thank Frank Guilford, Urban Legend, JT Funk, all you guys for chiming in. Big Joe Unanx chiming in. I'm sorry I didn't get all your questions in. We got one last comment from Frank. All right, Mr. Limitless, I accept your ridiculous challenge.
He's gonna die.
Yeah, man. I hope we keep in touch, and I hope we do a part 2 on this, man. And if you know anybody that could help us build this audience, we'd be glad to talk to anybody you could throw our way. Guys that are wrestling for TWA now, guys, whatever. We'll be glad to hear anybody's story, anybody you got. That'd be great. But it was a thrill talking to you tonight. And we like I said, we could talk to you all damn night, me and Keith, but we're not selfish. We usually only keep people about an hour. We know people have better things to do.
Right.
Than to talk to us all night. But man, I'll tell you what, I was honored to have you on here tonight, and I can't wait for a part 2. Rudy, you got any last words, sir?
Just thank you. That's it. Just thank you. Giving me the opportunity to bring up some of this stuff and talk about the talent out there. That's I don't look at this stuff selfishly, me stuff. I mean, there's a lot of kids out there trying to make it, trying to break in, and those are the guys, So if you guys are saying, if you have anybody out there, man, I got a laundry list of guys that need to be heard.
Love it.
Yeah. Hey,
we're on my way, man. Because like I said, JT Funk. I fell in love with JT Funk, and JT Funk has sent me a dozen freaking guys from all over the country to be on the show, and it's really helping us build an audience, and that's all we want to do. We want to build the audience so that we have a huge-ass stage for them to come on and tell their stories so that the right person hears them And what a thrill it would be if we're even a small part of anything that happens for somebody. That'd be great.
Being a small part, man, is the same as being a huge part, and it really is. I mean, you know, we can go on for hours and hours about
I know.
You know, but yeah, I totally get you.
Yeah, man. So yeah, Rudy, thank you again. We're gonna let you go on that one. Keith, any last minute comments?
Yeah, I mean, again, just thank you. Such an honor to have you here, for you to trust us to tell your story. And I'm just so excited to have, again, folks like you on, because like you say, it's so wonderful to be able to give back, to give people that need that platform or need that voice to get to the next level, to be able to help them do it. It's the best feeling in the world. It really is.
Thank you.
And Rudy, I hope you have a great holiday with your family.
Yes.
And let's get the hell out of 2020 and get into 2021, right?
Man, I don't know about that. I have a feeling 2021 is on the corner of the building. Like, I'm waiting for you guys. Come on.
Frank, friend request me on Facebook and send me a message, man. I'll have you on for sure.
Man, let me know so I'll know I'll be doing something else that day. You guys take care.
Yeah, man. Thanks, man.
Thanks a lot.
Yeah.
And Keith, we will be back here Saturday. 6 p.m. And man, what a thrill it was to have Rudy Gonzalez on here. I'm so glad he man, like I said, we could have been here till 8, 9 o'clock talking to that guy. Thanks everybody for chiming in. Stay tuned for Chrissy Ciphered Knowledge with Chrissy tonight at 8 o'clock. And we will see you next time on Around the Turnbuckle.
Ladies and gentlemen, what you gonna do, brother? Oh yeah! Woo! What? If you smell what the rock.
You got the wrong guy. I'm the dude.